is Hunt Applegate. I'm super excited to talk to you. There's so many great things in coding, and it's hard for me to pick a topic about this, but super excited to talk to you about learning React hooks. It's something that I find useful for myself and projects that I've done. And it's been a topic that's touched on, but I think there's definitely some tidbits here that I think can help people in their understanding and help people convert their class components to functional components, and understanding the lifecycle methods and how to utilize those in your functional components is definitely something that will help people in their understanding of hooks. So without further ado, we are going to learn React hooks plus get a dad joke. Who doesn't like dad jokes? And we can see here, this is a very basic application here. We just have one page. We have a parent and one child. We can either render our class child, or we can click this button to render our hooks child. You can see those are the same thing here. And the common lifecycle methods that we're going to be looking at are the mounting phase, which is the componentDidMount method in a class component, the updating phase, which is the componentDidUpdate method, and the unmounting phase, which is the componentWillUnmount method in a class component. So those are the main ones we're going to be looking at. Obviously, a constructor, we'll take a look at that as well, and then of course setState. That's what updates your page here. This is assuming you have a basic understanding of React and some experience with React in class components, but you're a little bit new to the hooks world and how hooks work and how you can convert class components to hooks. So the common hooks that we're going to be going over are useState, useEffect, and then we're going to talk about a way you can utilize custom hooks. There's a lot of hooks out there. We're just talking about a basic introduction here. And so if I, let's go back to let's open up our terminal here. I'm typing Control-Option-J to open up the terminal. And then if we refresh our page here, we can see rendering parent, constructor, render, and then our componentDidMount right after our component's rendered. So this is from our class child, and then we have some console logs as well in our hooks child, which just help us see when everything is happening here and when these lifecycle methods are being called. So if we go back, well, first of all, if we change this, we can see that if we don't like the dad joke, we can hide it if it's inappropriate. So if we change that, right, we will see that componentDidUpdate is running, and that's because we're passing this down from the parent to our child here. And so that method is running, and we can see that console logging here, and then the state is changing accordingly, hiding the joke or showing the joke. So if we do that, the hooks, right, we're conditionally rendering our hooks component here. It's just toggling back between the two. We can hide in hooks, we can hide it, and in our class component, we can hide the joke as well. So let's take a look at actually the code here, because I think that's the most helpful part of this. We can see our parent here. It's just a class component where we have an initial state, a couple of handle clicks, and we're conditionally rendering right here our what it says on our joke button. And then also which child we're going to show, either our hooks child or our class child. So let's take a look at our class child again. We have a constructor that we're using, and you might say, well, why do we need a constructor? And if you were to run this right here without a constructor, you get an error because you don't have access to this .handle prop. So in some cases, when you are manipulating a prop that's being passed down, in this case we're passing down an array, and we're just joining the array just because it's just an example. But if you were doing something like that and you needed to set initial state there and actually manipulate a prop that was being passed, you might want to set things up this way, where you can then call a method here to set your initial state. So we have some handle clicks here. We have something to set our joke. When we get our data back, we're calling this .setJoke. And then we are obviously using that part of state to actually in our return to show our joke. And we have our lifecycle methods here: componentDidMount, componentDidUpdate, and componentWillUnmount. And we're just console logging those so you can see when those fire. ComponentWillUnmount is obviously the component hasn't unmounted unless we switch between the two. So you'll see that when we switch over to our hooks child. And our hooks child here, right, if we were to take this and convert it to hooks, it would look something like this, right? So here we're showing, hey, if you wanted a constructor-like method, you could do something like this. We're using our useState hook, which we bring in at the top of our page. And then the naming convention is to return an array where the first item of the array is the state and the second item is the function to set the state. And in this case, we're passing useState a default value, or an initial value, I should say, and we're using a function here to compute that. It's the same thing here, it's just an array that we're bringing in from the parent, and then we're joining it together and returning that and setting that as initial state. If we didn't need to compute anything, we can just pass an initial state this way. So we have some examples of that. Again, you can see the naming convention. And then the lifecycle methods. So useEffect, which we're bringing in up here, is another hook that we're talking about. And this is a hook that runs after the component mounts, so it can be used as componentDidMount. And if we take this away, and there's nothing there, and we run it, then you'll see that it will make the API call, but only run once. Because if we save it, go back to our web page here. So now, right, I'm looking at the hooks page. If I click get joke, it's not running. So it's rendering, right? It'll show it's rendering, because we're changing the state. But the joke isn't updating because the API call is not running. Because the way that we set that up in our code is that useEffect takes a function and then takes a dependency variable. And in this case, we took away the dependency variable, so it only runs once the component's mounted, and it's being run like componentDidMount. If we add new joke back and save it, now we're getting a new joke because each time we toggle right here our new joke using our button, we're just toggling back between true and false. It's saying, hey, new joke's changed. So we'll rerun our effect here and keep returning new results. So we'll go over the custom hook in a minute here, just so you can explicitly see it, right? useEffect using, as an example, using didUpdate. Obviously, this is didUpdate as well because we're updating based off of a state change here. But we can also update based off a prop change. So if property comes in, right, in this case it would be the hide quote, show or hide quote, which is the status from our parent. All we're doing is just saying, hey, if that changes, let's reset state, re-render our page to hide or show that quote. ComponentWillUnmount, you can also use this and useEffect as well. You have access to a return statement here, in which case inside of that, you can then do whatever you want inside this function here, and it will run after the component's unmounted, like clearing out an event listener, clearing anything out, cleaning anything in your component that you no longer want on the page, active on the page. So then you can see our return here. Now if we change this to data, right, we can take a look at our custom hook here, which we set up. We named it getJSON. We brought it in from our custom hook page, and we built it using useEffect and useState. And it's really easy to do. You can bring in whatever hooks you want, and then plug them into a function that you're exporting, and kind of have your own, custom hook in here, and that everything's kind of contained in this one function, and it's a little bit more versatile. So we're using useEffect in here, and we have some dependency variables, API value and update, and these are our variables that we're going to give this function. So we can change the API, and then each time the API changes, the useEffect's going to run again. We can change the API, the useEffect's going to run again and give us our value back. We can change the update, right? So we can change the trigger that updates this. In this case, we have it set to that toggle button. And then we're just going to return that data, which is our state object within the custom hook. And then, right, we're just naming it the same thing here, data, setting it to a variable named data, and then we're plugging in down here. So if we go back to our web page, it should still work the same, but you see loading ... and that's because in our custom hook, we've added that little piece there to show, hey, we're actually, waiting to get back our joke, and then when we do, we'll show it on the page. So if I change this, right, the second one to ID, because that's what I want to get back, it's going to rerun that useEffect, give me the ID for each joke. So very versatile. You can use any API, anything you want to dial into, and then anything to trigger it here and how I've set it up. So hope this was useful to you. If you have any questions, the code base is on GitHub, and I'm available to answer those.